Hey everybody. Well, it's been an interesting last couple weeks. I had not a lot of expectations when I posted my video about getting that 1956 Clemente off of eBay a couple weeks ago. But as of the recording of this video, I have just under 8,000 views and I've added 100 plus subscribers. I want to say maybe I had 60 or 70 subscribers when I made the video, and now I'm pushing 200. So all I can say is thank you. Not sure how I really hit the algo other than just saying, hey, don't make an eBay mistake. There's a tip for you. But subscribers, welcome, and thank you all for the views thank you all for the views. Before we get started, because I have some pickups I want to show, I wanted to just talk about something in the news, and that is specifically Darren Rovell. So Darren Rovell has been in the news recently because he started jousting with Keith Olbermann about Olbermann's. So as of the recording of this video, Olbermann has a restored T206 Wagner. It was, essentially a Wagner that was trimmed around the shape of his head and shoulders, and the other part of the card wasn't there. And he sent it off to go get restored, and it's currently sitting in a CGC slab as restored, or as some may say, altered. There are some people in the hobby that are not, that are just really upset by this. I have no idea why. And Darren Rovell just used it as an opportunity to sort of poke Keith Olbermann, and Keith Olbermann, at least over Twitter X, has punched back, and it's just interesting to see. I don't know what all the hubbub is. It's a restored, it's a restored T206 Wagner. I guess the way I look at it is, it's the old saying, there's a seat for every ass, and if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. So if it ain't for you, don't buy it. What are you going to be upset about? It's only an issue if you have to partake, I guess, but no one has to partake. Anyway, Rovell, at least in the hobby, has been in there, but he was also, I was watching, he's also was in another video, and what triggered this is I was watching Cardboard Cynics, which is Dan's Vintage Baseball PC's channel, and Carlos's channel. I believe it's I Am Carlos's channel. Both fun channels I watch all the time. And, they do, I want to say, bi-weekly shows where I think every other show that they have, they sort of split who hosts the Cardboard Cynic show channel. And they showed a video of Darren Rovell on the channel. The context of it is, it was like a 4-block, it was a call where he was one of 4 people, and he was being interviewed by 4 others just to talk about collections and various collections. Rovell is not a card guy. He collects other things, tickets and other memorabilia, but he shared that he has a passion for collecting other objects. So check this out.
Maybe one time it's weird and you say, who would acquire pill bottles? But, first you have Marilyn, and then you have Hugh Hefner, and then you have Jerry Garcia, and then you have James Dean, and then you have Elvis. And now it's a little bit less weird.
A little less weird? A little less weird? You have Hugh Hefner's empty Viagra prescription bottle. You have empty prescription bottles of James Dean, Jerry Garcia, and Elvis Presley. You have an empty prescription bottle for Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, whose cause of death was ODing on prescription medications. It is even more weird than I thought, and Darren Rovell is an utter ghoul. I'm done. Let's see some pickups. Alrighty, so the first pickup I want to show is this 1961 Johnny Unitas completes 25 TD passes, because way back in the early 60s, completing 25 TD passes in a season was like super big time. You know, this is me chasing that Colt checklist. So my one project is I'm trying to get all the Colts cards from 1970 and before. And this card is really difficult to find centered. And frankly, even though the way this looks right here, this looks probably really uneven top to bottom, this in a raw fashion is probably about as good as you're going to get. This was like one of these other cards that I had in a checklist forever, and not checklist, but an eBay watch list forever. And I'd never find one. Whenever I'd find one, it would just be either the condition was really pretty beat up or the centering was just terrible. I don't know how well you can see, but even along the top, you might see some yellow. The printing issues on this card, I don't know why, because of the way the color overlaid is tough. This came up on eBay, was like a $20 buy it now. I just bought it immediately. Other than that, I would have had to go to like Dean's Cards to get something probably not even as well graded, but certainly passable, and it would have been double the price. Centering on this back here, just trust me when I tell you this. So this is 1961 tops. This is really well centered for this set, like crazily well centered for this set. There's a number of these 1960 football highlights in this set. Probably the most famous one is a Jim Brown one. When Topps was doing these sets, all the teams are sort of clumped together. So I want to say the Colts probably, I don't know if the Colts in 61 were sort of clumped in the first 10 or 12 players. The highlights were interspersed throughout. So this is number 57. Thrilled to get this card. So with that Topps project I picked up this 1968 Colts team test set. These are pretty rare. I don't know what the difference between rare, scarce, uncommon, etc. So this is from 1968. There are only 40 graded PSA copies out there. There's a couple raw out there on eBay. I want to say someone is looking for like $3,000 for this. I picked this up. I think Greg Morris Graded had been doing an auction. Someone had a whole PSA graded team set, and some of the teams were at an 8. This was a 6, and there's nothing graded in SGC for this card. So for a card like this, if I can get graded, and I'm super excited with a 6. These are scarce. I did not know if I would frankly ever find this card. Without, if you're willing to pay, you could find it, but could I find it at a reasonable price? I think this maybe sells only once or twice a year on eBay. I went to Strong's, but I didn't see any of these. I mean, maybe someone had them in the back. This is one of these cards, and especially you'll find in vintage football, there's low pop, but there's also relatively low demand. This was a little over $200 for this card, which I'm great. I don't know if I was ever going to find one for remotely, just even a passable number. So $200 to get this one knocked out, I felt great about. Again, only 40 graded copies. There's a few of them floating around out there. This is, obviously it's a 6. It's not perfect, but when you only got 40 graded copies and you're trying to fill up a list, you'll take it. This thing has been relatively stable. I think there was a 7 that went for maybe $100.50 last year, but this thing has floated between $175 and $250 at various grade levels between 5 and 7. It looks like for the last 5-6 years. So really probably getting it at auction was the best way to go. So happy to have this card. Don't know how many other people have these top team set cards, but these were not widely distributed. I think the story goes that This was just an insert product. Topps was trying to get into like cloth patches, and with cloth patches, they inserted this into that cloth patch package, and it was done on a test run, hence the test teams here. Were they trying to compete with Fleer? Who knows? But it was just a test run. So obviously happy to have this one knocked out of my list. I talk about the vintage Colts that I collect, and I'm trying to do also the vintage Hall of Fame run. I picked this up, I want to say the last half of last year, and I don't know if I ever shared it on a video, but this is a Gino Marchetti, all-time great Colt defensive end. Probably he's probably in the 75-year all-time team. 9-time All-Pro. Certainly an anchor of the Colts defense in that late 50s era. When the Colts played the Giants in 1958, the biggest game of the year, I think he broke his leg or injured his leg. I'm not sure if it was broken during the middle of that game. So this is his rookie card. He's a kid from sort of the Bay Area. Went to the University of San Francisco. And then I think he did not go. He was not off in the military, but he went to the University of San Francisco, was drafted by the Dallas Texans, who became the Colts a year or two later. So this was right as he was going to the Texans, and then was with the Colts in 54 until he retired, retired permanently in 66. But again, 9-time All-Pro, super big time. When I grew up, how did I know Gino Marchetti? He had a bunch, there were a whole bunch of Colts that had restaurant franchises in Baltimore growing up, and he had Geno's. And Geno's sort of wanted to compete with your Burger Kings and your McDonald's of the world. And he had the Kentucky Fried Chicken license in Baltimore area, probably pushing in DC and part of Pennsylvania too. I want to say it's 60 or 70 restaurants. Owning restaurant franchises, he was incredibly successful. I want to say he passed over the last 5 years or so. As part of that, I was buying all those Colts raw, and I had a lot of the Colts going back through all the years. Obviously, there's a number of Unituses I don't have, but Collector Investor Auction a bunch of years ago had an auction up for some cards, and this card was available on Collector Investor Auction, and I want to say this was Orlando's card. And before I met him, I ended up getting this that he had listed, and I got this at a great deal. This is Raymond Berry. This is 1959, so his third-year card, his rookie, is that famous 57 set. That I do not have that card yet. That set most known because it's the Bart Starr rookie, the Johnny Unitas rookie, Paul Hornung rookie. It's also Raymond Berry's rookie. Raymond Berry, I think he had some receiving records. I wouldn't say he's up there with your best all-time leading receivers of all time, but he did accumulate a ton of stats. But this is the 1959, and there's a part of me that said, you know what? Why not go after all these Hall of Famers in about as high a grade as I could reasonably afford to get them as this said, and then maybe over time I'll just unload the raws as it goes. So not just the Hall of Fame rookies, but let's see what I can do from a Hall of Famer standpoint over time. And not that this was an impulse purchase, but the way I'm looking at these is, if I can pick them up, really nice grade, really nice presentation. For all of the Hall of Famers throughout their run in that 1970 and before window, I'll do it. So there's the Barry that I picked up, which sort of triggered me on this journey. And with that, I picked up the 1965 Philadelphia Lenny Moore. This was his second to last card. So this is the card after he won. Obviously he was a great back throughout all the era and had a kind of shaky year in 1963. And then he showed up to camp one year and said, I think I'm really going to work hard. And ended up winning the MVP of the league in 1964. So this was his 1965 card. SGC hate, the whole trick is, where does the white end of the border and the background of the sky begin. I guess the more challenging that gets, the nicer the white is of the card. But these are the backs of the 1965s. Ended up buying a 1963 Lenny Moore raw and sent it off to get graded. I ended up getting an SGC 8 on that, so I was pretty stoked on that. But this is the 1965 of Lenny Moore. And so I said, let's begin. And there were some auctions going on eBay over the last couple weeks. And this old label, PSA 1957 Art Donovan. So this is Art Donovan's third card. PSA 8, don't let the serial number fool you. Usually a whole bunch of old numbers start 090. There's a number of serial numbers that, one you can tell on the flip, you can just see where the 8 is here versus right below it on older grades. But there's series, like if you see something starting 900 or 600 or maybe 31, that generally points to a very old grade. But this is a 1957 Art Donovan. Colts did not win it this year. They really performed. This was the first year they broke out. They ended up winning it in 58 and 59. But there's the back. Art Donovan, a Hall of Famer. He was basically retired in 61 or 1962 maybe. It was in the Hall of Fame, I think, at 69. I went to the Hall of Fame in 69. Became a big personality. For those of you that recall, gosh, we're almost pushing 20 years ago. Was on ESPN just because he sold some books that told funny stories. Same auction, I picked up this PSA 8 of Marchetti from the same set. In spite of the high grades, and the centering on both of these were pretty much right down the middle for me, and the corners were good. I think I did well because the older grades might have scared some people off, but I want to say I got into both of these for under $70 a piece all in, which, hey, give me a high grade 8 of a Hall of Famer from 1957. I'll take it, especially for the Colts that I want. So I went down that path, and Jim Parker, one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. This is a really recent grade. Like, this is probably graded within the last 4 to 5 months. This is his 1960 tops. Just dead centered. I'll just say four sharp corners recently has been pushing out a bunch of high grade late 50s to early 60s sets. And they've just been bangers. They're not all perfect, but this thing is, I don't know how much better centered you can get here, but I love it. I jumped all over it. The same set, I picked up an 8 of the Lenny Moore, the Reading Rocket, and this is his 1960. So this is like, again, once you get into 9 territory, the numbers get out of control because of the registry chasers. And I'm realizing that of the players and the cards that I want that aren't just like true inner circle Hall of Famers, like these were all Hall of Famers, but if you're from Baltimore area or you're a Colts fan, like, yes, these are just names of history, but they're not truly inner circle Hall of Famers. But love that card. Again, I've got a number of these in raw that I'm just gonna we'll see what I do with them, but they're obvious upgrades. So with that, I'm trying to do the Basketball Hall of Fame run, and there's a number of player runs that I've been trying to do, and so I've picked up a few recent cards here, and one of them, one of the runs I'm trying to do is Dr. J, and this I got on a Fanatics Collect auction. And I want to say I got into this shipping and everything for under $50 in an 8. And frankly, I don't see how you go wrong with, a really high grade. This looks, I don't know if there's a tilt on this card, but a recent graded Doc. This is the 1978-79 set. I got into this for under $50. Now, it's a big leap once you go to 77. I want to say an 8 recently sold for at auction for about 150 or so. There's people, and 77 is hard to find centered here. The design of the card, it's kind of a giveaway when it's off center, so I'm looking for that as well. But you know, as the years go back, especially 77, and it gets more expensive. But this was $50 or less than all in, and love it. You know, this is the era of basketball. This pre-Jordan era, as much as they weren't on TV, these cards are just, in my eyes, beautiful. I also picked up this Moses Malone from the 81 set. I got it in a 9. I want to say I got it for under $40 shipped all in. Again, Moses Malone, probably even more outer circle Hall of Famer. But I don't know how I go wrong with a card like this, in that it's a 9. Again, this was the last set that Topps came out with before they gave up the license, and then Star took it over in, like, I don't even think there was a basketball set in 82. Star took it over in 83. But that's the Moses before he fofo-foed it in his way to Philly. And then with that set, you know, I'm collecting not only Moses and Kareem, not only Moses and Doc, but I'm also collecting Kareem. This is a recent pickup that I got from, I'm gonna have to zoom out on this. This is a recent pickup I got from, that I saw on Twitter of all places, and someone who had a bit of an Instagram presence, and it was a Doc in a 1976 and an 8.5. Again, I'm trying to get these in a relatively high grade. And this in an 8.5, obviously it's an odd grade. I guess the old saying is it's an 8, but it's a centered 8. So it gets the 8.5, again, an older grade, but it was really well centered. There's not a lot of these at this level, certainly really well centered on the front. But, you know, once you get at this level, I want to say the populations really fall off. I think it's probably under 100 in total once you get 8.5 and higher. 9s are brutal. I think people are wanting upwards of $1,000 for a 9. This was certainly not that much, and not significantly over than like a dead centered 8 if you were going to get it. But that's that, and probably one of my favorite pickups I had here was the Doc. It was this Doc in his last card of the Nets before he joined the Sixers. Again, a very recent grade in an 8. Finding this centered in good shape. You know, you could buy it raw, and if you buy it raw from a reputable grader, that's going to be in that near mint to mint window. It's easily $200. And I think my attitude was, I'm just going to take the risk off the table and just take the risk off the table and just pay a bit of a premium and just have it slabbed. I mean, this is probably, I'm assuming it's, I don't want to say what it will cost to have it slabbed at PSA today, because it's $80 to have anything slabbed today at PSA. I'm assuming it's a minimum 80 to get it slabbed now, if not more, just because of the nature of the slab. So, you know, it's rock solid centered, graded in the last 6 months. Have been looking out for this card forever. I still need the All-Stars of both Kareem and Doc, but these are more expensive than the All-Star, so I'm happy to take my time on it. I think I shared that I had the 75. I picked that up at Strongsville in an SGC 8, so love that, and happy to have this. I gotta get that 77, and wouldn't mind finding a nice 79 to pair with it. One of these days, God knows when, I'll get the Doc on the 80, what is it, the 80-81, with the rookie. So bought a few non-sports. I'll wrap it up with this. This is a card I picked up from at auction on eBay. Again, this is a recent grade. This is a Canadian set in the non-sports. Ken Burns has done a lot of series, and I know there's people out there that have the Ken Burns, that do the Ken Burns, like, hey, I watched Ken Burns baseball series. I'm going to collect all the players they profile here. He also did a long form documentary. I want to say that came out in the late 90s to early aughts. Just, I want to say a 14-parter about jazz. And I would say Louis Armstrong is profiled real heavily. Not that I bought it because of that, but boy, if anyone ever does like a similar Ken Burns documentary, let's buy someone from every set. That would be an interesting set to put together. As a matter of fact, I'm almost doing it, not intentionally, but just by accident, by the number of cards I'm getting. This card, I'll zoom in a little bit. This card is a Canadian gum set. It's called by the Maple Leaf Gum Company, and it's called the Sax set. And this is not just jazz musicians. This is that sort of combination pop jazz set. Like this era, that era is when jazz really went mainstream in the late 50s to early 60s. You know, if you know Dave Brubeck, you know, he hit really hard in the late 60s. So I think this team really leveraged that. This set really sort of came out and leveraged that piece. This was printed in Holland. And so you'll see there's a long bio here. You know, Louis Armstrong, super famous. Interestingly enough, this came out 4 years before he hit #1 on the pop charts. While obviously he, you know, his story is legendary, and he came out with his Hot Fives records and Hot Sevens records in the 20s. And was relatively omnipresent during a lot of the goodwill missions during World War II, Korea, as almost like an ambassador of the U.S. You know, I would say the cultural capital that was sent around the world, and he would show up in movies, in Hollywood movies and stuff. He did not hit #1 on any charts until he kind of like smacked Beatlemania after the Beatles had 3 #1s in a row in 1964 and came out with Hello Dolly, of all songs, and that hit at #1. Even the songs that, you know, he passed, I want to say in 1971, and the songs that he, a lot of us really know for, like Wonderful World, while they came out, they really didn't become popular, like almost standards, until I want to say the 80s, when that song was mostly associated with Good Morning Vietnam, if those of you that seen that Robin Williams picture. But this is a really slick card. These are not common. They're a few on eBay. This I got at auction, all in under $40. I want to say there's an 8 that someone's out there looking for $350 on. I think that's the highest graded. There's 2s out there that are graded that folks want 40 or 50. This just happened to be an auction right from eBay that I think I just searched, generally speaking, for stars and, you know, certainly musical acts that I sort of connect with. And boy, for $40, I don't know how you go wrong. This was printed in Holland. And so you'll see, I have this Ella Fitzgerald card. So this is Dutch gum. I mean, these are sort of omnipresent. You can find these cards all over the place, of stars. You know, if you go on eBay, you can find them in various condition. These are blank backs, but you can tell, even though it's a Canadian set, these were printed in Holland. Dutch gum, these were printed in Holland. You can tell there's probably a lot of the same manufacturing that takes place here. So I thought that would be just interesting to show how, yeah, they're different, but there is some commonality here just in the vibes between this set and what I would call a standard Dutch gum issue. I think there's an Elvis Presley card in this set that's super, that's like pretty popular. I want to say this set is maybe 50 to 60 cards. I'm probably understating. It might even be 70 cards. I wouldn't say this is not the biggest card in the set. I think the Elvis is probably the biggest one. So going down that non-sports, I do have a few non-sports cards, and I'll just share my one last non-sport pickup to give you some context. So, you know, as part of that sort of, not that I'm intentionally doing the Ken Burns thing, but, you know, I bought some of these. These are from a set called American Pie that Topps came out with, I want to say maybe 15 years ago. and they will do like different decades of, hey, here's pop culture icons and stuff like that of the era. So there's one from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. Like I want to say, but it's weird. It's not just people. There's things like, there's like a card of TV dinners, because TV dinners became a thing in the 50s and 60s. Now, I don't know how hot a TV dinner card is, but there's standard cards. There's this sort of that are flat, normal. There are these refractor cards you can get. So here's Nat King Cole. Here's Duke Ellington. And here's Miles Davis. And weirdly enough, Miles Davis does not have many cards. I think this set came out in 2011. This might have only been his second card. So I bought those cards. I thought that was interesting. And the way these sets work, and it's a lot of top sets, you've got the base, you've got the hollows or the refractor types, but then there's typically the chase cards of each set. And in this set, the chase cards have little circles on them. And I was like, these are neat, and I wouldn't mind at the right price getting the little chase cards. These are not numbered, but the chase cards with the circles are numbered to 76. And there was one that came up on auction on eBay, and I took a run at it and I picked it up because I think I was thinking to myself, let's make a run at who's impactful to the world and what might be interesting to pick up. And this is the last card I'll show you. And what I picked up was, and that's the circles. These circles show that's how it's a chase card. You'll see this is numbered to 76. And I got Steve Jobs. And this is when Steve Jobs has 3 cards in this set. And you'll see this is 1980s. And this is when the Mac was released. For those of us of a certain age, we may remember that. 1984, especially the famous TV commercial. You'll see this image here. So I said, hey, who maybe like 20, 40, 50 years from now might be impactful? That's maybe worth taking a swing on, that is probably going to stick a little better if I'm getting out a 76 card than a TV dinner card. And I said, yeah, let's take a shot at this. So I want to say this was maybe $60. So pretty neat. He's got 2 other cards in this set. One right before one sort of referencing his passing, and then one when Apple went public. So it's a different picture. Anyway, a lot here. That's sort of what I've been up to beyond those big whale cards. Y'all stay tuned. I'm working on a little project that I'll be coming out with probably over the next week, which is a bit of a summary of what I've learned getting back into the hobby. So stay tuned. And folks, thanks for all of the new subscribers and the views. Take care.